Hi, I'm David Gregg with the Rhode Island Natural History Survey, and you're watching a recording of the December 2023 meeting of the Rhode Island Woodland Partnership. The Rhode Island Woodland Partnership is a collaboration among foresters, landowners, conservationists, and professionals to advance the stewardship and long-term protection of Rhode Island's woodlands to benefit the local ecology, economy, and community enjoyment and health. This month, community foresters Molly Henry and AJ Elton are going to be talking about a new program that will be of interest to people concerned about Rhode Island's forests. The Urban Forests for Rhode Island Technical Assistance Program is a partnership between the Green Infrastructure Center and Rhode Island DEM. You can find out more information about the Green Infrastructure Center at gicinc.org. They're going to be making a plan for how to spend Rhode Island's share of Inflation Reduction Act funds allocated for urban and community forestry programs. It's a 5-year plan that looks at a wide range of things, including reviewing tree canopy, codes and ordinances, community organization capacity, and more. They'll be providing GIS and other tools and a menu of different strategies for improving the amount and health of urban forest in neighborhoods across a full range of socioeconomic statuses. So, give an ear, and you'll probably learn something. And we'll talk to you soon. The Rhode Island Natural History Survey presents videos to showcase the animals, plants, geology, and natural systems that surround us, and the people and organizations working to understand and conserve them.
Welcome to the December 2023 Rhode Island Woodland Partnership meeting, in which we're joined by 2 Rhode Island staff members from the Green Infrastructure Center. We're going to talk about the Urban Forests for Rhode Island Technical Assistance Program. But since I'm not sure, in fact, I don't think we've all met, I'll go around with a round of introductions. Each of us can just say who you are, who you work with, or where you work in Rhode Island. So my name is Christopher Riley. I'm co-coordinator of the Rhode Island Woodland Partnership with Kate Sales, who's not able to make it this afternoon. I am based in Providence. I'm a research associate with the University of Rhode Island and also have a practice called Sweet Birch Consulting. And we typically pass it to someone who hasn't introduced themselves yet. So David, I'll send it over to you.
Thanks, Christopher. I'm David Gregg. I'm the director of the Rhode Island Natural History Survey, which, for those of you who aren't familiar with how it works, most state natural history surveys are public departments or attached to a university. And in Rhode Island, the Natural History Survey is a 501c3 nonprofit. Let's go to Paul Roselli.
Thank you, David. Paul Roselli, president of the Burrillville Land Trust, a private all-volunteer land trust in the Northwest Territories of Rhode Island. How about Bob Verrier?
Hey, Bob Verrier, president of Rhode Island Wood Operators, owner of Verrier Tree Service, and I also sit on the board of RIFCO from West Greenwich. Go to AJ.
I'm AJ Elton. I'm the community forester for the Green Infrastructure Center, working in Rhode Island. And I'll pass it to Joseph.
Hello, I'm Joe Jamraz. I'm a volunteer at Newton Hills City Park in the city of Providence. I reside in Johnston, but the park is just too inviting to stay away. So, yes, and I'll hand it off to Craig.
I'm Craig Custer. I'm the current president of Newton Hill Conservancy. And we've been working with Chris and various people. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And we look forward to all the help we can get. So it's interesting. It's it's fascinating when you're not in this world to step into it the way I am. So thanks for your help. I guess Paul Dolan, you haven't been asked to. I'll move it to you.
Paul Dolan, Area Director for the Rhode Island Resource Conservation and Development Council. I live in Situate. Amanda.
Hello, Amanda Freitas. I'm the Rhode Island Wildlife Action Plan Community Liaison, That's a joint project with the Rhode Island Natural History Survey, so under David Gregg, and then Rhode Island DEM Division of Fish and Wildlife. Despite those two affiliations, I actually live and work in Providence. I'm in the Foundry Building in Planning and Development.
Thanks, Amanda. John, would you like to go next?
Sure. John Mitchell. I work with Nibner Research Reserve based in Prudence Island. Stewardship coordinator there, managing about 2,200 acres. Danielle.
Thanks, John. Danielle Shannon. I am a climate adaptation specialist with the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science and the USDA Climate Hubs. And I'm working a partner with Christopher as we develop some materials for Rhode Island. I'm in Cranston, Rhode Island. And
Great.
pass it to Molly, I guess. I don't know if you're allowed to speak yet because you're the speaker.
Well, I'm with AJ, so yeah, that's great. Thanks, Danielle. And I worked with NIAX a bunch. I'm a big fan. I was formerly with American Forest, so I have presented to you all on some of the tree equity score work that we did and some of the work we did with NIAX around adaptation planning. So I'm really excited to be in this new position and talk to you all today about another grant that I'm working on in contract with DEM. And I'm based in Pawtucket, and I will then, if we're ready for the presentation, I'll kick it off with AJ to start us, and I'll share my slides.
Yeah, I think we are. We have a really nice mix today of some core longtime Rhode Island Woodland Partnership members and some new participants as well. And glad you're all here today. But AJ and Molly, you can take it away.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I really appreciate it. I've been with the Green Infrastructure Center for a whopping 3 weeks now. So if some of the things I say sound more like questions than statements, I apologize. I'm still becoming familiar with the new gig. But we're here today to talk about the Urban Forest for Rhode Island Technical Assistance Program, which is a partnership between the Green Infrastructure Center and DEM. Slide. The Green Infrastructure Center, GIC, is a nonprofit organization that helps communities evaluate green assets and manage them to maximize ecology, economy, and culture. We do this by mapping land cover and urban tree canopy, modeling high-value wildland habitats, creating strategic green infrastructure plans, and then writing, teaching, and training. This slide may speak to some of the work that you all are doing. The GIC has written numerous books, guides, and case studies on how to plan and implement green infrastructure strategies for communities. I encourage you to go to our website, gicinc.org. There's a lot of material available from planning guides, guides for reforesting cities and towns, developing landscapes, and I'm an arborist and an urban forester by trade, but as a student, I studied natural resource conservation and environmental science. And it's exciting for me to be part of an organization that's doing all of this work. From one of their mottos is from the wildlands to downtown. And so I think most of my focus will be more downtown than the wildlands, but it brings me joy that my colleagues are working in the wildlands, and I can have some association with that. So please check out the website. There's great materials. GIC does statewide green infrastructure plans. It'll take a map of all of South Carolina, identify, where there's opportunities for connectivity and for more green infrastructure. And really, we have a great GIS team. It's exciting to get familiar with those folks and see the products that we're creating. And if you're interested in talking to us further about some of the work that we're doing outside of downtown areas, please reach out, let us know. But today we're here to talk about the Urban Forest for Rhode Island Technical Assistance Program. So you may or may not know, I guess it was this past spring, there were, through the Inflation Reduction Act, it was $1.2 billion that is being allocated across the country for urban community forestry programs. Rhode Island was given about $9 million, some of it directly to the state, to DEM, and other portions of it. There's an application process. So some municipalities, East Providence, a couple others, were allocated money to help grow and support their urban community forestry programs. And so that's where Rhode Island DEM reached out to the Green Infrastructure Center about assisting with growing urban forestry statewide in Rhode Island. And that's when Molly and I got involved. We've also been allocated some congressional directed spending. So there's some criteria for the Inflation Reduction Act money that is funding us. But we've also been given some congressionally directed spending that has a little different requirements, but another $300,000 from Congress. And the team that's working in Rhode Island, Molly, and our GIS landscape planner is Christian. He's the top left, and the director of forest conservation for the Green Infrastructure Center, bottom right, is Matt Lee, and Timber and I are in the bottom left photo.
Had to unmute myself. Thanks so much, AJ, for giving us some of the background on GIC and then also where the funding for our program is coming from. So I'm going to talk about what the actual program is. And I want you all to keep in mind as we're going through this, if there are certain communities that you think should apply, and encourage them to take part if they are eligible, because this is a really unique opportunity to provide a ton of expertise and assistance to municipalities that really have no formal urban and community forestry program. I believe that really only Providence I can speak of has an actual urban and community forestry program. Newport does a bit as well, but most municipalities are in kind of reaction mode, and it's not their fault. They don't have the resources, they don't have the baseline understanding of their canopy and being able to make informed decisions and have goals. So that's really what DEM wanted to get out of this program, and why they're contracting with GIC is to provide that kind of baseline foundation for building an urban and community forestry program. So with both of the funding sources that AJ mentioned, the IRA funding and then the congressionally directed spending, we have enough to support 8 municipalities or federally recognized tribe, of which there's only one in Rhode Island, the Narragansett. And so these 8 municipalities we would be working with over a staggered timeline, and that is really, we're trying to time it so that we have capacity to support them with our GIS team, our landscape architects, etc., but also so that they can time the program to align well with things like their comp plan updates or other initiatives or capacity things they might have. They might be finishing up another grant and not be able to focus on this. So we really wanted to give them the option to start at a time that was best suited for them. So we are staggering it into 3 different cohorts. You can see the timeline there, and I'll go into that a little bit deeper. But essentially, our hope is to work with each of the communities for 2 to 3 years. And the reason why there's a little bit of a range there is that we have both planning funding and implementation dollars. So depending on how long that process takes, we really want to meet communities where they are and provide assistance. And some are going to need a little bit more, and some maybe it'll be a shorter process. So we're really trying to stick by them based on where they currently are. And so AJ mentioned the two different funding sources we have, and the IRA funding does provide a little bit more of a comprehensive technical support program. Essentially, what we are providing for each of these communities is an urban forest master plan. So we're providing all of the elements that you would see in those plans, in addition to the implementation pieces, doing a neighborhood scale planting, working with communities, doing direct community engagement, and providing support to do things like build a sustained advocacy organization if there isn't one, or provide support for an existing organization to help them meet some of the goals that they might have already established. So with the IRA funding, we can provide all of these items that are listed here, and I'll just quickly review them. So a lot of times in an urban and community forestry program, you have a code and ordinance review. We have an audit tool that we use to look and see how we can improve code and ordinances, and looking for redundancies, making them stronger, really looking to see how you can make them more concise, and also thinking about enforcement pieces too. The other thing that we do, and a big piece of this, is the canopy map. So looking at the canopy map itself, figuring out where the plantable areas are and where some of the stormwater benefits and some of the ecosystem services that can be calculated out of the plantable areas. We also provide some assistance around FEMA eligibility. So you have to have your trees declared as part of your application in order, or already declared. If you are having a federally declared disaster, you need to be able to have those trees already identified in order to get funding for from FEMA. So also thinking about disaster mitigation and things like that. We also have the ability to train residents and local groups around proper tree care and tree planting, and we're looking at building a curriculum, looking at some partners in the state potentially to provide that training in conjunction with some of the expertise that we have in-house. And then also I mentioned the implementation side of things, where we have funding to plant a pretty significant number of trees, and it might be that they are in one specific neighborhood in addition to maybe some public right of way. It really depends on the community members themselves and what they identify. And so that leads me to the community engagement piece, whereas we have the city itself or the town itself that's engaged in kind of this baseline understanding data collection piece of it. And then we're also building a local committee that's going to help identify and provide input on the design of the implementation piece of it. So in addition to the items that I already listed, the IRA funding goes on to provide the additional assistance with the local committees. We have landscape architects, as was mentioned earlier. We also have GIS, and we have planners on staff that can help with doing things like a design charrette with the community. We're very open to, yes, we have to plant trees because the Forest Service is looking at that as a metric. But if community members want to revitalize a vacant parcel, or if they want to do a pocket park, or they want to upgrade a park and do some things in addition to planting trees, bioswales, etc., we want to make sure that we can help the community meet their goals. In addition to the Forest Service wanting us to measure the number of trees too, we also want the community to feel like they're getting what they need out of the program. So in addition to that, we also have the ability to, as I mentioned, form an advocacy group if that's something that's identified as needed. So a lot of communities, they might have a neighborhood group or a citywide group already, and that's great. We want to continue to provide support and help them meet their goals. If there is none, we want to help them understand municipal processes and give them the baseline core understanding of what a healthy urban and community forest can look like, so that they can go out and they can advocate and they can attend city council meetings, tree committee meetings, maybe join the tree committee or start a tree committee. It really is going to depend on where the community is and what the need is. So if it's not apparent, it's really kind of pretty flexible. Yes, there are certain things that we're looking to provide, and those are really the urban forest master plan, the actual planting itself. But beyond that, we really want to be creative and helping address the issues around green infrastructure or related things that the community is saying that they want and need. So that's the difference between the two different funding sources and the elements that are supported in each of them. Just to give you a quick look at the evaluation criteria, because Forest Service is requiring that the application process is competitive. So with that in mind, we put together a criteria. So with the IRA funding, it's a little bit more competitive. If you're familiar with the climate and environmental justice screening tool that the federal government put out, I guess a little over a year ago, that really is identifying disadvantaged tracts, looking at both demographics in relation to environmental burdens that those populations are exposed to. And so you can see the map in the upper left-hand corner here has the what we call CGEST tracts. And so those areas are going to be where we're going to prioritize the IRA funding. And in addition to that, we want to make sure community members that are part of the local committees and the projects themselves that we implement are happening within those CGEST tracts. And we're really looking at not just the land cover of how much of the CGEST is represented in the municipal boundary, but it's also just looking at it is actually looking at the percentage of the population that's living in those tracts. So making sure we're optimizing or maximizing the number of communities that we can support that really should be prioritized for the funding. In addition to that, you all maybe have heard me talk about tree equity score when I worked at American Forest. So we do use tree equity score as a way to gauge at various, so basically the lower the score, the higher the need essentially. So a score of 80 versus a score of 100, we would prioritize an 80 over a 100, and we have a point system for that. So it's looking again at allocating those funds to the communities that need them most. And then finally, we're also looking at health equity zones as another factor. So if a municipality has a health equity zone represented, maybe it's encompassing the entire municipality or chunks of it, or maybe they have multiple, but that alone just adds another layer of points essentially to their application. And I think that is it for the eligibility. So the CGEST tracks are just for the IRA. And also we use these other two pieces, the tree equity score and the health equity zone. The congressionally directed funding, we're only looking at tree equity score and health equity zone. So just distinguishing that. Just to give you a quick snapshot of our timeline, we launched the program in November of this year, and that's when we really started the call for applications. You might have seen DEM put out a press release, and our applications are due just a few weeks after the holidays, which is super fun, but that's the way the timing worked. And January 18th is the deadline. So we're hoping to make the selections and announce the municipalities that'll be participating in February. And then you'll see that staggered start time for each of the communities and the different phases of the work that they'll be doing. This is a 5-year grant. So we're going to be working with these communities for a while, and we're not going anywhere. Once we end things, you know, with the project, we will continue to provide support as needed. And I'm going to go through this rather quickly. So I just wanted to give you all a sense of what the work that GIC does looks like, what some of our products look like, and some of the work that we're already currently doing in Rhode Island. GIC is actually not new to Rhode Island. Matt, who is pictured in AJ's slide, Matt Lee, is currently working in 3 different communities. AJ and I are going to be taking over as well to help with that. But DEM received a grant about a year ago, I want to say, and contracted with GIC to work with East Providence, Barrington, and Bristol to essentially do a canopy assessment. And so I'm just going to show you what it looked like in East Providence. The canopy assessment will absolutely be a piece of our urban forest master plan, but obviously this is not going to be as comprehensive as the plans that we're going to do through the program that we're talking about today. But just to give you a sense, we are able to, obviously I mentioned do the initial canopy mapping, and this just gives you a peek at, looking at the land cover data, and looking at the current canopy in East Providence, they're at 34%. And then we looked at potential planting area. And this is a really interesting process because I'm not speaking ill about tree equity score at all, because they have to do this nationally, but oftentimes there are areas that you have to get feedback as to whether maybe something's already approved for development, or it's a ball field, or it's an undesirable place to plant for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's a field and it's for birds and pollinators, or it's a meadow. And so we draft out what the potential planting areas are, the PPA, and then we get feedback directly from the city around those pieces that might not have a potential. So you can see a big difference between the draft analysis we did and then what the actual was. So it was 11% in our draft, but it actually was really only 5% of the municipality had PPA. So that really kind of changes how the PPA looks and what is possible. And once they get the PPA, what they do is they take the large trees, fit as many as they can at 40 feet diameter, and then they fill in the rest with small trees to get a sense of how many trees could be planted if you were to get at the 100% PPA. I mentioned a little bit about water quality, and the GIC has a stormwater calculator and looks at some of the non-point source pollution that can be captured in a lot of different scenarios. So you can plug into the tool and see with your existing canopy what some of those non-point source pollution benefits are that are being mitigated. You can also look at different scenarios where if you were to reduce canopy by a certain amount, or if you were to add canopy by a certain amount, and get those numbers. And that is a tool that is on the website, and something that we're able to use both, I think, for goal setting within the municipality and figuring out where they, their stormwater goals and things like that. But also it's a good educational piece to help people understand some of the very significant benefits that trees have on our drinking water and stormwater management. And then this is a super important one. Oh, I don't know why I skipped ahead. So a lot of attention has been on heat islands, surface heat, and looking at, in particular, low-income communities and communities of color, and how they often have disparities in terms of their exposure to more extreme heat. And so what we do is we look at the PPA, and really it just gives you a sense of what we can do with the data. You can overlay it with anything. This is one thing that you could do. You could look at surface heat in relationship to low-income communities. And then within that, you can prioritize where the high, moderate, and low planting areas are because of those different elements. And so it really helps you really target where, if you have a limited amount of resources and capacity, and you have a goal to protect the low-income residents from severe heat, then this is where we want to be planting, in those red areas. I'm not going to go into this too much, but essentially the map on the left is looking at, again, targeting where are those really great places based on the soil type where infiltration will be optimized. And so where can you get the impact for your stormwater goals? And then the one to the right is really looking at the impacts of tree loss. So where you have the greener areas, the darker green areas, that's where you do not want to lose your tree canopy, because that will have significant impact on the waterway and on the water quality. And so again, these are just different ways of looking at goals that various municipalities might have, and be able to pinpoint where they might be able to focus their resources. And then that gets us to creating a goal. So this is something that we want to do with each of the communities. This is what East Providence did. So they decided they wanted to maintain the current canopy level, which is great because a lot of municipalities are just losing it. So it's not to say that that's not ambitious. It's still is ambitious. But on top of that, they want to look over the 10 years period of increasing it by 1 to 2%. So we're able to use, we have a canopy calculator, a goal calculator, and we're able to basically figure out how many trees it would take to reach that 30%, 36% goal where they're starting at a 34%. It's just over 12,000 trees over 10 years, which comes to about 1,200 trees per year. So that is something that we would want to put in our plans. And really, this is the last slide is the urban forest master plan is going to be more goal oriented and have very specific strategies that are time bound. But just to give you a sense, we had open houses and public participation to help identify different strategies that both the city and the residents really wanted to see to help them achieve some of their goals. And so this is just some of the strategies that came out of some of those meetings and workshops. And you know, our work is going to be a lot more robust, but I just wanted to give you all a sense of what GIC does, what our products look like. There's a whole lot more that we're going to be doing. There's some of this work that is new to GIC too, and AJ and I are going to take some of our experience and our expertise and apply that to Rhode Island, and you know, for every cohort, hopefully learn something and keep improving and find ways to help our municipalities have a more robust and responsive urban and community forestry program. So this is our information, and AJ and I, so I've only been at GIC for 2 months, so I'm also a newbie, and I really appreciated this opportunity to practice, and I know that this is a friendly crowd. I've talked to you all before, so it's nice to have a chance to share this information and feel like I can get a little bit more practice under my belt. So thank you for bearing with us, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Well, AJ and Molly, thank you for the great overview presentation of the program. And I, you know, expect it's of strong, you know, interest to a lot of Rhode Island Woodland Partnerships members, and appreciate your giving me this slides to share with the larger membership after our meeting too. We'll open it up now for Q&A and discussion.
I forgot something very important that I want to mention, which is that there is no match required with this grant. So this is free to any municipality. The only caveat I would say is that obviously staff time. It's not enormous, especially considering the kinds of services that we're providing. It's attendance in workshops and meetings over a 3-year span. And we are looking to get authorized sign off from a mayor or town or city manager to ensure that we have the level of commitment that's needed to create good plans and productive implementation. So just wanted to put that out there. And there's no administrative piece to this. The contract's between DEM and with GIC, so they don't need to reimburse there's none of that. And I think that was really smart, because in meeting with the municipalities, they said, wait, this is free, I just have to show up? And I mean, essentially, yes, there's a little bit more. You have to be engaged and committed. But in terms of the financial burden, there is none. And then one other thing I forgot to mention, because Lou is not here, I know sometimes he attends these meetings, but Lou and I and AJ and some of our colleagues at GIC have been doing kind of a tour of meetings with various municipalities. And one of the things that we did identify is that there are a number of communities that are interested in things like tree inventories, or later on down the line, maybe an urban forest management plan. And so Lou's program through the Urban and Community Forestry Program grant can absolutely support those things. So East Providence recently did their tree inventory, and because they have that, now they're doing a tree risk assessment, and they hired a consultant to do that. So just something to think about is that we realize that there are some bits and pieces that can be supplemented using the DEM Urban and Community Forestry Program grant. And so we want to make sure that we're setting up each of these communities to have what they need and fill any of those gaps.
Thanks.
Yeah, Molly, I have a question. How often did you find when you were reviewing the codes and ordinances, any mention of ecosystem services, and how heavy a lift was it? If they weren't in there, if that phrase or knowledge or explanation wasn't in any of those, have you had any experience yet in getting that phrase or that term or those issues into things like comprehensive plans, ordinances, etc.? Question mark.
It's a good question. It's TBD because we haven't done a code and ordinance review in Rhode Island yet, and in the communities. That's part of the program, so we would be doing that. I did do a little bit of homework and research and preparation for the meetings that we had with municipalities, and I will say I don't think anything was explicitly mentioned. I think that there's more, like in the comp plans, there might be just a nod to the value, saying the value of, natural resources. But this program, we would be able to quantify that in a way that would maybe be a little bit more impactful and help with decision making or grant writing, etc. So yeah, it's TBD, Paul. We'll see. I don't know, AJ, do you know about the Providence codes and ordinances? Because AJ was the forester for
The
Providence.
forester and director of the forestry division not too long ago, a month. And no, I don't think that there is a whole lot of, or if any, ecological services mentioned in at least like the urban forestry ordinances in Providence. Not that I'm aware of.
So so our town charter was looked at, I think it was 2 years ago. And the land trust made an effort to see if we could get that phrase into the town charter. And as far as I know, we did. Haven't quite found it yet. Hasn't been rewritten. But as far as I know, ecosystem services, that phrase and what it means is now in the town charter. And I think, and please correct me, I think we're the only ones in the entire state that have that in there. And
I haven't read all the charters yet.
yeah. Well, when you do, please let me know. Let us know, because I would love to find out how people did it, and then what was the outcome? Like how are they utilizing? Is it in planning? Is it in zoning? How are they utilizing it? Because we haven't used it yet, but come 2024, we're going to start. Once we find it, once we find it in the ordinances and everything else, once they define what the heck it is, once they define what it is, then we're going to try to use it as much as possible. Thanks, Molly. Thanks,
I think
AJ.
also our executive director, Karen Firehawk, is just like one of those people where she can always have a story of, oh, I remember working in that community, they did this and they did that. So I feel like I could also ask Paul and see if there's any sort of precedent for it and if there's an example that we can point to. Absolutely.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is to, I guess, the Joe Demraz, AJ and Chris. Chris and AJ, you know Newt Hill, or you know of it and know what it's about. AJ, Chris, you worked on the plan, and AJ, you were the forester there. So I don't know if this is, we have a forestry plan in place. It's a two-part question. One is, do you see an advantage for us to put an application in? And then how intense is this application that has to be done by the 18th?
Providence should definitely apply. Molly and I have been talking the last day, was that today, yesterday, about it would be for us, GIC and DEM, a little bit of a different, since Providence has a lot of things going on for the urban forestry program. They're further ahead than most, if not all municipalities in Rhode Island. So where we would be able to assist would be different projects. So it would help us just keep us not cookie cutter projects, but being able to work in Providence will give us opportunities to do things that we're not doing in other communities, assist in other ways, work with other nonprofits in other ways. So please encourage the city of Providence to fill out the application, and it's a needs assessment and 20 to 25 minutes. So it's not a huge ask to 20 minutes to fill out an application for free money for years. Seems fairly reasonable.
Have they filled your position?
I heard, I think through Molly, that they made an offer. I was speaking to some staff, as we know, the wind was blowing last Sunday, Monday, and despite it not being my responsibility anymore, I still get anxious when the wind is blowing. And so I called some of my staff, and it was more like boots on the ground grumbling than any like insight into how the hiring process is going. So I don't know is probably the short answer.
So the applications between the city only, not nonprofits.
Yeah.
Can you guys talk a bit about how, municipality and nonprofits could work together in developing an application?
Absolutely. So Providence is an interesting one because I was just talking to PNP yesterday, and I think they express interest, but it's unclear as to whether or not, because of the relationship between PNPP and the city and it being a cost share, who would actually fill out the application. In reality, I think PNPP has all the information they need because it's a lot of yes or no questions. Do you have an urban forest plan? Do you have an inventory? Do you have a management plan? So they would be able to answer those questions. Whereas if AJ was still with the city, he would be the appropriate person to fill that out. With that
Consider
being said,
filling out the application for them, actually. If
we
like
could do it'd be like,
if it's January 17th and we haven't gotten it from Providence, there might be like a mystery application that they received.
right. Ultimately, in an ideal scenario, you would have the verbal okay from the mayor in Providence, I would say at the mayor level. And you don't need to have a letter or anything. If you are selected, we are going to do an MOU with each of the communities, and that has to be a signature from, some sort of authority. And again, that's just because there is turnover in cities and we want to make sure that commitment is there. So, if you wanted to work with PNPP on the application and get the okay from Parks Department and kind of get the encouragement to do it, I think that's great. And, if selected, then we would follow up and say, okay, we need to put an MOU together and we need to make sure we have the right authority that's signing off on it.
All right. I don't want to monopolize this, but I have another question. Would your planning and engineering, or I don't know if you want to use the word engineering, but I will, handle erosion issues?
That's definitely something that we can look into. Yeah. I can't say specifically exactly how that would work yet because I am so new, but I know that is a topic and an area of expertise that staff have.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Just as we gain a greater understanding of how the program works, or is each municipality that may apply, will they be assigned to a single cohort that will have funding? It'll be implemented during part of that 5-year period, and then it may be other municipalities during the later stages?
The way that we have the application set up is that I believe it's near the end, you prioritize which cohort you want to be in, and we can't promise that because obviously we only have capacity to support a finite amount in each of the cohorts, but we'll try our best to align it with their priorities, because we understand, again, like I was saying, there's capacity issues, or they're working on a plan and they want to do things in parallel or in preparation. So we do want to do the best that we can.
I'm also curious about how the program, may be applied in more rural towns, which would certainly have, some urban centers and mill villages, for example, but most of them, but might also have some, different green infrastructure needs from areas like East Providence, that was featured. And perhaps you could talk a little bit about that, what that might look like, or in those areas.
Well, I failed to point out that in terms of the eligibility baseline is that they have to have an urban area within them. So if you can go to Rigis, and there's a link within the application too, just to verify. However, so this program, doing an urban forest master plan, that's going to be municipal wide, right? And that's going to probably include some more rural areas. The neighborhood plantings, the implementation pieces will be done in those urban areas, and likely in health equity zone and or a CJES, the climate environmental justice screening tool area. So we are very urban focused, but again, with the plan itself being municipal wide, will certainly come into, areas that are more rural.
And I think, like Molly talked about this a little bit during the presentation, that if it's the community's priorities to, work on riparian areas, or whatever, other natural areas, then GIC is there to assist with that.
Exactly.
If your municipality does not put in by January 17th this year, you have a 5-year program, can they put in at a later date?
AJ?
Yeah, I think it depends on how many qualified applicants we have on the front end. If we don't fulfill the 8 communities with the applicants by January 18th, then we've just briefly spoken to DEM about maybe having a second round of opportunities to apply.
Can I ask another question? Now I'm out of Providence here now. I'm out of my conservancy. I'm thinking of the town of Johnson. We have a solar farm coming on, well, being developed, right? And that same developer is looking at 3 other locations, and there's an uproar in the town about, taking over clear cutting for this sort of stuff. And I don't know if I'm out work with some of the politicians here, put some lawn signs on, but I haven't met the new mayor yet. But I wonder if I shouldn't approach him and see if I do know the town planner, he's part-time though. If we should approach them to see if they can offset these things, because the town people are in arms that, they're gonna lose all those trees, and it's justifiable. Yes, we're gonna save on the other end, but we're still gonna lose all that stuff. So do you take into consideration when you are looking at those criteria maps, deforestation through solar farms?
Yeah, if that's something, if it's a solar field and that's what it is, then that would be the feedback we'd get when we do the potential planting area. So that obviously would not be a potential area. And if it is not speculative, but if it is actually on the books and it's approved, then we would remove that. At the same time, I would say that the code and ordinance review, that would be an optimal time to look at the zoning and to look at other ways of mitigating or avoiding that altogether, because that's what it's come down to now, is the zoning code and how to give municipalities more power in these situations so that we're, not getting into these circumstances. I know this has been a hot topic, but it's happening all over the country too. So I think that there's probably a lot of examples of zoning code and ordinances that we can put into place that would help kind of lessen the opportunity for those large, clear cutting and solar fields.
Or would you help shepherd people to, or developers, where they could do it, in the unplantables? Ground.
I mean, that's part of the
ground
ordinance.
sites or things like, that. I don't know.
Yeah, there could be something in the ordinance, or I don't know, like some sort of incentive. We'd have to put our heads together and think about it, but I'm sure it's been done somewhere else. Like I said, I mean, it's happening all over the country, and it's it's kind of backwards, as we all know, because trees store carbon, and then we're trying to meet a carbon goal by clear cutting and creating solar fields. So yeah, something needs to be done to address that, and this program would definitely provide some support around that. In addition to that, if that's something that the local committees or the advocacy group wants to focus on, we can give them the support to be like, okay, this is all we need to know around municipal processes, how we need to advocate, how to write testimony, whatever it is that they need. So, if that's a priority item, then we can provide support around that.
I mean, I'm not pro or against. I'm wondering how do we balance it? Amanda, you're in planning for DEM?
I'm with the Rhode Island Natural History Survey, but my project is the Wildlife Action Plan. I'm housed in DEM Planning and Development.
Housing in DEM, yeah. All right, so this is in your lane, so to speak.
Yeah, somewhat. So my target audience isn't really like going out to talk to family groups or whatever. We have other folks who do that. I work a lot with planners and a lot more in the policy realm than it's sort of the fun trotting out animals kind of stuff. So this is a little bit in my wheelhouse for sure.
Greg, I'm thinking that Grow Smart Rhode Island could be a good resource for you with your work in Johnston that you're talking about now. Scott Millar, who's been a longtime member of the Woodland Partnership, is retiring from Grow Smart at the end of the year, but you might be able to catch him.
As a resident of Johnston, I would say, your support for this kind of stuff is really important because a lot of municipalities have phenomenal planners and they don't get anywhere if they don't have enough residents who want to see the right thing and are actively engaged.
And are up against, very deep-pocketed developers,
Yeah, and goals that are, well-intentioned, but can play out in sort of ugly ways. So, yeah.
All right, well, I mean, I've got a lot on my plate, but it's once it's done, it's done. So it's kind of important that, the what do they say? The immediate always crowds out the important, So I'd rather not make it so immediate. Thank you. That's good.
AJ, Molly, do you, for municipalities that may be developing applications with partners, do you encourage them to have some interaction with you beforehand in trying to figure out something that's a match for the program, or would that be a conversation that would be more likely to happen after the applications are received?
We're available to have those conversations if we can help with the application process, if we can explain anything, we're available, but I don't know that it helps the application per se.
And just to add to that, I think there's going to be some outreach that happens after the applications are submitted and in that time frame where we make the selection, because it really is more of a needs assessment, and none of the pieces is like, you say, no, you don't have a management plan. Well, great. Like, we can help you, I don't have an inventory. Great, we can help you, as in, well, we can get you into Lou's program because this program does it. But my point being is that it's not used against anybody if they're saying, no, we don't have something. That just kind of demonstrates that we can provide or fill that gap. And in addition to that, I think that there's going to be conversations just to distinguish and understand capacity, because that's a big piece of this, is that, we're having municipalities provide or submit these applications, but we need to know that there is a level of commitment, because they will be signing an MOU, and we do need, it's great to have a plan, but obviously if the right people are not engaged and they're not bought in and they're not, a part of it and committed, then it's not going to go anywhere. So we don't want to just do the work as an outside contractor in that kind of model. We want to work with them, and AJ and I are in the community. Like, I live here, I want to make sure that these things are followed through on, and ordinances are adopted and things are enforced,
Mm.
That's some helpful context and provide some understanding of how the applications will be reviewed and assessed.
Yeah.
Any more questions for AJ and Molly?
Oh, I'm good.
All right, well, thanks so much again for being up, for presenting to the Woodland Partnership Group. No, we'll be hearing more of the rollout of the program and look forward to that. And as I mentioned, we'll be sharing the slides, for those of you who may be interested in applying. So at this point, we'll shift into the updates portion of our meeting. And typically do have a place here for the policy and legislative updates. I know that some of our policy stalwarts aren't with us today, but still wanted to provide a space for that in case anybody would like to jump in. Know that there's sorry, David, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, sort of in the category of policy, if I don't know if anybody on the call now was part of the meeting that the Forest Conservation Commission held a week or so ago, but the recording of that's available on YouTube, and I can put the link into the chat. TJ Boudreau sent it around. Maybe Amanda, you were there. I thought that was really interesting, and some of the things that the public, I'll call them confusions, but I don't mean to prejudge them. Some of the confusions that the public brought to that, I think should be instructive for us to, sort of how to think about the public's understanding of forests. There was one person who was concerned that the definition of the most important forests didn't include that field in Pawtucket that's going to be paved. And it was sort of interesting, like they talked about planting trees there, so it's a forest. And it was really interesting, because it's the sort of integrated, the idea that saving open space in urban environments should be integrated, so you don't have like the field people fighting the tree people instead of both of them working on the asphalt contractors. Anyway, be pretty interesting if you have, it's about an hour long. If you have a little time to watch that, it's kind of interesting. So I'll put that link in the chat.
Thanks, David. Yes, one of the benefits of being able to put our meetings up on the YouTube channel. Anything else on the policy and legislative front? I know that there is, some work going on behind the scenes about a proposed green bond for 2024, but I know we'll be hearing more about that in the new year. Well, then I think we can shift into more general updates from individuals and your organizations. So if you have an update that you'd like to share, feel free to jump in and do so.
Christopher,
Craig, I want to do New to Conquer Hill, Craig.
Well, Joe, you can give us your thumbnail on that, right? I mean,
Yep. We're still working on the equip program with NRCS. Hit a little stall with that, but we'll be bouncing up after the holidays, I'm sure. So, but things are pretty well up there. The trails were maintained throughout the winter. A few trees down from recent storms, but things are going well up there, I guess. Anything else, Craig, you want to add?
concerned about the loss of old growth right now. We saw, I don't know if it's lack of water on the hill, and again, I'm not considered erosion, but isn't it we say a water table getting lower because of our sluiceway that runs all year round. I guess the great intentions of the WPA putting that sluiceway in, just drains water off the hill all the time. But seems like, especially now, you can see that they're falling in that. And I don't know if that's something our urban plan is taking into consideration, because it's water table. Or does anybody have any expertise on this that would say it's just a natural occurrence, or is there a way to mitigate this? Not really in the update, but I'm taking this knowledge source in front of me. I'm flipping pages. Anybody want to weigh in on this, on old growth forests?
Not sure we understand the specific issue there, Craig.
We're having die off, big old trees dying off. I guess we all go forward, but I mean, it seems to me, since I've been with the organization, that I don't know, it looks a little more than natural to me.
Well, and they're not beech trees or ash trees.
Joey?
No, I think there's some of the old oaks that were around, and you see what else. That's about it. That's fallen, and the birch trees that seem to be snapping all over the place. But that's about it. The big oaks kind of losing their integrity a little.
How much defoliation did you have about 2 or 3 years ago?
That seems to have recovered. I noticed this year, it was a pretty healthy forest. We didn't have many tent caterpillar incidences. There weren't many, I just thought the trees looked kind of healthy, and I think they did spring back.
Okay.
Where a lot of places have not, I noticed.
You might have had a lot of stress from the defoliation and a couple of years of serious drought.
Well, last year we had that heat segment August, that 3 weeks of heat in August that didn't help trees much. Yeah, so that may contribute to the our old trees kind of count getting down a little.
So I know that you didn't experience really, significant spongy moth defoliation up there, but as you point out, there are a lot of, older trees, particularly the oaks that, that already have some health issues. And when you have drought and winds and other weather events that, exacerbate, some of these things, I think you may just be seeing some natural mortality in there as well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't entirely discount, changing water tables. I mean, that's definitely an issue in some areas. I don't know about in an urban site, especially an elevated one like that, but their, water withdrawal is one of the impacts in forested wetlands, for sure.
Well, as I said, the one that springs to mind is that this sluiceway that was put in to, to put people to work at WPA, probably for stopping erosion, but it's running all year round, so. Off a hill with no weather. I mean, even the 3 weeks he was talking about, the water's still running. So the table's coming down. So I don't know. And then do we we just let nature take its course here, or do we replenish these trees that are going? That's a question too.
So sounds like a reason to get a management plan.
Well, we have one going, but I don't know if it's dealing with the old growth. We're more concerned about right now.
Yeah, what Craig has seen has been the last 3 years. Our forest management plan is 3 or 4 years old now. Christopher, I guess 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old now. That was done just at the start of COVID. We finished that out, so 2020. So we got a 3-year forest management plan. I don't know how that's
Guys, the invasive is doing really well. So.
Well, one thing I would recommend is, when with the new city foresters in place, engaging with them and letting them know what the Conservancy is all about, and taking them for a walk around the hill, and trying to get them interested in working with you as they're able to do so, within the constraints that they're working with.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, glad to hear about the work and interest and progress on Nutaconkin Hill. And Paul, go ahead. You've got an update.
I have Tom Wessel coming in virtually to speak on Saturday, January 27th from 9 to 10 a.m. If you're interested in signing in, go to the RIRCD.org website and just sign in. We're also looking for people that have unique pictures of forest settings. He is basically a forensic forester that reads the landscape, so he'll be more than happy to look those over. So if you send me a picture in an email, we'll forward it to him. Once again, Tom Wessel will be speaking on Saturday the 27th, which is a Saturday, 9 o'clock in the morning. Sign up at the RIRCD.org website.
Thanks, Paul.
I have an update, although maybe it's a little bit older. So sometime around May of this past year, the Burrillville Land Trust, oops, wrong one. Oh my goodness, can't believe it. I had this all set. Oh well, I'll stop the screen share. We acquired 65 acres of land right near the Connecticut border. Some of you may have seen that as an announcement. What's fascinating about this property, and once I call it up, and I really would like to call it up, here we go. And let me see if I can share my screen again. Was that we not only got 65 acres, and about 22 acres will be has been or is being farmed by the O'Leary folks. There's the property right there. You can see the agricultural fields, but surrounding it on that road and Croft Road is all of this forest. So the 22 acres is the agricultural fields, those 2 agricultural fields, and the remaining, what is that, 22, 65, so 43 acres is forest. And we're grateful both to the O'Leary folks for selling it to the Burrillville Land Trust. We got money from Rydam and TNC, the Nature Conservancy, and we got some money from Bafflin and the Levy Fund as well to purchase the property. So that's our newest acquisition. We're really, we've been looking for agricultural land for forever. And here we are. Now we finally got it, along with over 40 acres of forest. And the forests are actually, we did a perimeter survey a couple of weeks ago, and the forests actually look pretty good. This is an older photograph, but the forests look pretty good. That's my update.
Oh, nice.
Thanks, Paul. Congratulations to the Land Trust on that.
I have an update on Natural History Survey. So the Conservation Stewardship Collaborative, which is funded through an endowment at the Rhode Island Foundation, is putting a small amount of money into an initiative that we're going to do this summer to try and, I'll say, begin mapping rare natural community types in Rhode Island. So the Rhode Island Natural Heritage Program, when it was in full operation, tracked rare animals, rare plants, and rare natural communities. And we've done quite a bit of work on the animals and plants through the years, but almost nothing on natural communities since about 2000. And so this has come up several times in the last year, most frequently in the context of the solar siting bill and the Forest Conservation Commission, where it's been really hard to use what we already know about rare natural communities because they're not well mapped. And you can, sort of say, oh, you have to conserve them, but then the next question is, well, where are they? And you say, I don't know. And then that's the end of the discussion. So we're probably going to be hiring somebody next summer to go out and revisit known rare forest types. We'll start with forest types, so oak holly forests and, I don't know, black spruce bogs and Atlantic white cedar swamps and a bunch of other stuff, and try and relocate them, do a new assessment of their condition, and if possible, get a rough map of them. And we'll see how far the money goes. I'm hoping we can do all the known rare forest locales, but we also know that there's a lot of stuff that's not mapped. So we'll hopefully cast a net for people to tell us where we should go map things that are important to put on our list of conservation targets. So it's exciting. It's new money. It's a new part of the heritage database that hasn't been worked on in 20 years. And it's really important for several projects that are going on right now. So it's still, we haven't 100% developed how we're going to do this, but Tom Kutcher, who a number of you know, is really, he's working on natural community mapping, but in the context of wetlands assessments. So he's going to oversee the development of the methodology for the assessment and mapping, and then also kind of supervise the person who's doing the work. So maybe I'll come to you for recommendations of awesome natural community ecologists, botanists who are looking for work in June through September, and also recommendations for places to go look for rare natural forest types, especially, so that we can get them on the map. Thanks.
Thanks, David. That sounds like a really exciting and interesting project that we'll look forward to hearing about down the line.
Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah, Christopher, a couple of comments I wanted to make. One comment was about the Johnston solar siting projects. Why can't we come up with a way that we can get the solar developers to plant X amount of trees per acre that's cleared on different sites in the urban settings? That's one thing, one question. Second thing, as you all know, the Rhode Island wood operators are made up of loggers, sawmill people, and arborists. However, this year has been real tough because of, as you know, such wet ground. So it's been tough to harvest. I know for myself and a couple other guys on the board, it's our harvest is way down low this year because of the woods are so wet. There's one tract of land I moved in on July, which is gravel, and we worked for 2 hours and got mudded out and had to stop and we've had rain every week since. Yesterday, I went over to the site just to visit it. It's just over the line in Sterling. Literally, you can see the Rhode Island state line from there. There was 14 inches of water in a 5-gallon bucket. So we've been hitting it real hard as far as that goes, as far as operating in the woods goes. Another thing we're going to do is we're resubmitting the bill that we put in last year for tax breaks. Hopefully that goes through. It went through the House last year. Hopefully it goes through the Senate this year. And lastly, I wanted to let you know that we had a fundraiser, a Lager Load for Kids fundraiser, the first one ever in Rhode Island. And it was to benefit Hasbro Children's Hospital. We ended up raising $32,000, which we just presented the check to them the other day. It ended up being the largest first-time fundraiser ever in North America.
Wow.
So we're pretty proud of that.
Well, congratulations, Bob. Sounds like the Wood Operators Association is really gathering momentum in
Yeah, we're
projects.
we are going at it step by step.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you regularly participating in the Woodland Partnership now.
Yep.
I'll share a couple of updates myself. I guess as some as you know, I'm working on the Southern New England ex-urban oak adaptive silviculture for climate change project. I'm the point person for the replicate site in Rhode Island. There are 2 more in Eastern Connecticut. It's a joint Connecticut-Rhode Island project, and the treatment implementation of the site at the Hildesdale Preserve is probably ongoing right now and should be concluding fairly soon. This is just the harvest implementing the initial treatments. There's some tree seedling planting planned for the spring of 2024. But along with the outreach component of the project, there'll be opportunities to visit the site if you haven't already, and see what that looks like and discuss forest climate adaptation on the ground, which is part of the impetus for the project. And we came out with the guide on increasing forest resiliency and adapting to changing conditions for Rhode Island forest landowners and those who care for forests in the state over the past year. That would include land trust and municipal forests. And this coming year, we're going to be working on a guide for professional foresters and natural resource managers. I'll be working on this with Danielle and the Northern Institute team. Rhode Island DEM and Nancy Stairs are also key partners. So that's something that we look forward to sharing with you, and maybe reaching out to some of you to to serve as reviewers, certainly to get your input into the project on the ground. So that's one update. And then just for shifting gears, actually with Paul, I'm involved in the Blackstone Valley Resilient Riparian Forest Project, which is a sort of 2-part project that involves tree planting, in some of the urban communities in the watershed, like Central Falls, some of the urban parts of Cumberland and Woonsocket. The goals are improving water quality and also benefiting human health. And one of the interesting things about this project is there's also a suburban and rural component that funds development of forest management plans for landowners in the Blackstone Valley, and forest assessments for landowners for whom it may not be practical, to have a full-scale forest management plan. So that's underway and rolling. Town of Cumberland is actually getting 3 plans for some of the big municipal properties that it owns. And we're have a meeting in Lincoln on January 31st So if you know of forest landowners up in that region who might be interested in a plan or assessment, you can send them to me and Paul. And Paul, if you have anything more you'd like to add there.
No, it's the split that you talked about. Those with 10 acres or more would qualify for a full management plans, and basically under 10 acres, we would basically do a forest assessment. Just go out there, give them a recommendation sheet on their property.
So try to bring some, forest stewardship resources to a corner of the state that has significant forests, but sometimes they don't receive as much attention as do forests in other parts of the state. Any more updates? Danielle?
I'll jump in really quick. I'm with although I live in Rhode Island, I work with a group that works across 20 states, and we do have a few people who do work in New England, and so it's been a great privilege of mine to be able to work with Christopher in my home state on climate change and forestry issues. But Christopher wanted me to also let you guys know that if you are thinking about climate change, or especially if you're thinking about how we're, with all the IRA and BIL funding, like how are some of those considerations going to get built into programs like NRCS, which makes it a little bit easier for people to integrate that into their land management. Just want to let you know that we're working on that. So as part of the USDA Climate Hubs, we got a lot of money from the Washington office, NRCS, to actually work with states individually to integrate climate considerations into practices, to listen to states, to go to the NRCS offices and have conversations and try to build capacity within each of the states. So it's very early days, but just want to let you guys know that's part of the work that we'll be doing over the next couple of years. So I know for some of you, I'll probably be seeing you again as we continue with those conversations and even hiring some regional people with that specific focus. And that all tiers to this bigger update that we're doing. So with the National Climate Assessment that recently came out and all of the new information, we've been finding over the years, I've been with this group for 10 years, that we can write just about anything that you want us to write about, but it's hard to get people to read it. It's hard to get people to use it. And especially hard to get consulting foresters and people who are on the ground the tools that they need to actually have conversations with landowners. And so that is also part of the big thing that we're doing, is updating all of the climate change information in thinking about this, how do we put climate change information in like usable tool formats or usable syntheses that can be directly copy pasted and implemented into management plans, really thinking about that modularity of this information so that it's more accessible to consulting foresters and also and professionals. And then also it's more approachable to landowners who have questions. And so it's sort of a big suite of things that we're working on over the next couple of years. And so I'll hopefully provide some updates as things start rolling out, and definitely working very closely with this group to help create materials that reflect Rhode Island's perspectives. So thanks.
Danielle, a question about that with the vulnerability assessments. Is some of the vulnerability data or projections actually being changed themselves in light of new science over the past few years?
I think that's part of the bigger, so we just hired a person who her first day was on Monday, who's going to help support a team of folks across the region to think about this approach to, thinking. First, we have to look over and evaluate the past vulnerability assessments and the past data sets, and then compare them with new data sets to see if there are any changes, and then question in the places where there are changes, how we need to bring in the experts on the ground in order to understand what that change might mean, what those implications are. So right now, I can't say if there's anything new. I suspect not. If you were to look at the National Climate Assessment, you would see a lot of stuff has been repurposed from previous assessments, and that there hasn't been huge changes in trends and in particular vulnerability. If anything, we're all just experiencing what some of these projections are. The rain events that we experienced a couple days ago are unfathomable. I mean, they were told, right? Like, we're gonna get more rain. We're getting more rain. It's gonna get more rainy. And holy cow, did it. So we are literally experiencing these changes in real time. And I think that that's where we all sort of the conversation is going to have to shift to not how do we adapt, but how are we adapting now? What are we doing now? What can we directly do now in this time in order to get that ball rolling, to get the change moving? I think that's probably the new conversation that we'll be having. But I'm very early days in this conversation, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. And certainly we'll be bringing in experts in order to reflect that regional attitude. It's not just me writing reports. These reports reflect the consensus of people on the ground.
Thanks, Danielle. Amanda.
I feel like plans that are hard to get people to read and hard to get people to use is my cue to chime in. I know I probably sound like a broken record to most of you, but some of you are not familiar with the Wildlife Action Plan, or as familiar, I doubt. And so I figured I should just give an update, even if it sounds like same old to most. I've been working a lot at the regional level to queue up Wildlife Action Plan revision so that the Northeast states have some consistency between the plans. And this is something that we had last time, but we try to improve, and so there are some changes. And so I haven't been really doing anything too much at the local level, but I'm hoping in very early 2024 to really kick off Rhode Island's portion of the revision. And with that, I have a strong desire to not reinvent the wheel with things we've already more or less gotten right. Because the Wildlife Action Plan is a federal document that has a lot of technicality to it. And so we do want to pull the experts in the room and make changes where they're necessary and make additions where they're necessary. All this talk about disease, it's a good example of that. We have plenty of things that have come online in the last 10 years. Solar is not in the plan. Development as a threat is in there, but solar specifically is not. So those things need to go in. There are plenty of those examples. But the big focus, in addition to getting that right, is really just how do we make this a plan? For those of you who actually jump in and use the plan, how do we make it digestible? How do we expand that audience? And so I'm going to be thinking a lot about that, and would love input where you have thoughts on that. The other thing that's different is, until I get told otherwise, I'm considering that this round plants are eligible to be considered, where they really weren't before. We do a plant SGCN in the last plan, but it was really like a quick and dirty list. And at some point, the Fish and Wildlife Service decided that it's a long story, but there's a federal legislation called the Recovering America's Wildlife Act that did not pass, but at some point, the feds thought it was likely enough to pass that they basically gave their blessing to add plants to wildlife action plans and to actually spend time and money on that. And so they haven't reversed that guidance, and so I'm taking that as my permission to do that. And I think what that means for this crew is that, trees and things that support trees that we care about can be taken into account much more holistically than to just say this is habitat for an animal. And so those black spruce bogs and the black oaks or whatever else you tag as important and the experts tag as important can be in there in a little more meaningful way. And that obviously is important for wildlife. So and then I just want to, this isn't part of my update, but I just want to reiterate what Molly said about trying to prevent forest loss before it happens. And so anything that would have developers, helping to plant trees in the urban landscape is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing. I don't disagree with it. But I think anything that's a policy or a talking point or any kind of outreach thing should really triage that and not treat it as like a one-to-one thing, because they're both important, but they're different. And so I would want to be careful about how we speak about it and not give a lot of credit if forests are still coming down where they shouldn't be coming down. So I just wanted to throw that in there before I gave my microphone back. Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. Anybody else? It's been a lively meeting with a lot of updates. I guess at this point, I think, if there aren't any more, we can wrap up. We do look to have a January Woodland Partnership meeting. I'm not sure just what that'll be yet. We're certainly looking to engage with the folks who've developed the Providence Tree Plan now that they're rolling that out, and hope that they can join us for a meeting at some point. Also hoping for a cooler season field tour during the coming months too. And as always, if you have a topic that you would like to share in a presentation, or a place that you help take care of that you'd like to bring Woodland Partnership members to, please be in touch with me and Kate, and we can help make that happen. But at this point, I want to wish you all a happy holidays. Thanks for all your support and participation in Woodland Partnership meetings, and I look forward to keeping you with us, and we will reconvene in early 2024. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Happy
Yeah,
Christmas.
please. Thanks.